this experiment. All right, so what we're going to attempt to do is, you heard what each one of the three of us do. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I heard you all clapping, so that must have meant something. So now I'm just going to ask these guys a question. They can answer it. We can answer it as a group. And we want to hear your feedback back and forth. What do you want to know? The process, I don't know, the inspiration, where it comes from. Do you make any money doing this? I mean, whatever you want to know. So, Thelonious Monk was quoted as saying about his influences, each generation finds a box on the top of the shelf and then thinks they've discovered something new. All right? How do you guys feel about it?
You could hear Michael then, right? Oh, it came on when I talked.
All right, want me to do that again?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thelonious Monk is quoted as saying about his influences, each generation finds a box on the top shelf and then thinks they've discovered something new. All right, so how do you guys feel about that? Do you feel you've discovered something new? Do you feel you're carrying on an oral history or a musical history or whatever the case might be?
Good, Tony, good.
I don't know who said it, but basically there's like nothing new per se. Everything's been done one way or the other. So I think it's just you put your own spin on things. And like a love song, Joziah I'm sure knows about this, a love song is one of the hardest things to write because it's how do you do, how do you make it new? A feeling that everybody's so familiar with. You could put a cappuccino machine in the background, and that might work. Yeah, let's write that one down. What would you say?
Cappuccino love.
Cappuccino love. Well, that's pretty fun. Well, it's espresso love, not as straight. Close enough.
I think cappuccino machines and messed up wires. This is good. I'll have to talk to Phil. I think things keep coming back around till we get them right. I think things change and we can make them better. I think we've done things in kind of like a better and better way through the ages. Music or anything, it comes back around, and I think we can improve on it by what we've learned from our mistakes or the pain we've caused by the way we've done things, or the good that we've caused. I think things come around again, and you try to improve on them, and then we build on the vocabulary of what came before us. I think things are similar. I mean, there's only 7 notes, and then you hit the same note again an octave away. There are fundamental things in the universe, but we can improve on how we put them together and get the glitches out. So I think, to me, music and artists try to get to a space where you can move stuff around and improve it. Somehow when we get in a room together like this, you kind of get into that state of suspended disbelief, where you're not really attached to the physical world, and you think about possibilities when you're in the poetry or art realm. And I think in that realm we can find new answers that might improve things.
Are there any things about your process now, from what you've learned over the years, that if you had to go back and kind of do things differently when you were younger, things that you do different now that you really like, that work better for you now?
Any of us, yeah.
Good. Well, I think my process now is a little bit more, I'd like to say it's a little bit more regimented, but it's really more freeform. I mean, I do it more now than I did back then, but it's really okay, it's 4:30 in the morning, I'll do it now. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, I'll do it now. I usually try to do things in the morning because it's just more quiet before the tweets come in and all the other nonsense. But yeah, that pretty much would be my process.
Better bones, better dancing, right?
Especially better bones. Yes, absolutely.
I think the biggest thing is editing for myself. When I was younger, it was strictly inspiration, and I would write something down and I'd say, well, that's the greatest shit I ever saw in my life, and then 24 hours is like, oh my God, what the hell was I thinking? So I think the editing part is a very important, crucial process that you don't really see when you read it, and when you hear it, you probably don't see. The whole idea is to make it seamless, but there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into making the thing work. And that's the biggest difference that I found with being a young writer as opposed to a more mature writer is the editing process. And I think that's crucial for anybody who wants to write. Is you're not betraying your inspiration. You're just making it better.
A lot of the stuff that I write, I always think the ghost. I'm kind of a believer in ghost writers. I think a lot of ghosts co-write things. So I kind of meditate. I've always done this. I kind of meditate on a topic or things that I'm concerned about, and things come to me. I think it's a lot of the dead people that don't have anything to do in the spirit world. They come around, they help you. And then, I think the dance, I've learned more and more how to, like Tony said, then gently edit that stuff so that the joints move a little bit better and there's more of an easier correlative base with the audience. I've learned to do that a little bit more. But so for me, the dance has gotten better for me between the ghosts and me. What they want to say, the desire of the ages, and tweaking it a little bit.
Don't you feel like you're standing on the shoulders of giants and you're trying to have a conversation with the dead and trying to speak to them but carry it forward into our time and make it relevant but also stay connected with their time? I mean, there's so much brilliant work out there, and as an artist it's intimidating to try to even live up to what came before us. And so this thing about ghosts really is interesting.
Yeah, and I think content is always more important than form. I think the greats and the giants that came before us, they still feel like they weren't able to solve the problems of the world yet.
And so it's our job to kind of
tweak it up. I think there's a humility to have towards them for great form and content. But I think they really want to help us all get to the next level of content because we haven't made it right in the world. I really think we can make it right and then do a quantum leap into something that's awesome.
How do you feel?
Well, just working on the shoulders of other people that came before.
Well, it's inspiration. Yeah, it's inspirational. You just want to do right by them. All your rock and roll heroes. Everybody that I looked up to is a lot of them died, unfortunately. And that's a lot of the stuff I write about is that. But it's just it's still inspiring to me, and it's still like I said, I just want to do right by them. So whatever I can bring to the game, we'll try to do.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it is for me too. I really work off of basic ignorance because I'm not too sure about all these people that came ahead. Like people will say, what do you mean you never heard of this one? Or what do you mean you don't know about that one? Or what do you mean you never read about that? No, sometimes they just haven't. But I find that there's a certain link between what we do that moves it forward, that keeps tweaking it forward, as Joziah says. And so even if you're not inspired by something eventually something gets handed to you one way or the other that acts as an inspiration. Irene O'Gara.
I just wonder if any of you work with your dreams at all. If you find them inspiring, or if you're aware of them, if you record them, anything about your dreams.
I don't remember my dreams at all, so I really don't. I'm not trying to cop out. I just don't.
Well, this is the same only circus of dreams I keep getting.
That's right.
I keep getting that.
I work with my dreams all the time.
There's something to that. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's. But actually, dreams is a funny thing because I don't remember all of them, but I have these reoccurring dreams, and I keep thinking that there's something there And once I figure it out, I'll know like the meaning of life, you know, the whole 9 yards. So it's kind of funny because it's sometimes a dream will actually be a seed for a poem, you know, or a phrase, and then, you know, it just takes off from there. I don't remember too many of my poems except for this reoccurring one. And like I said, I'd like to write it at some point in time, but I can't get the dream going far enough. You know, it always stops, and then it's like, damn it, you know, what the hell's going to happen now? So, you know, I have to kind of like, in my subconscious, get back into it. But it's fertile territory for sure, you know, for sure.
To be honest, Emily dreams a hell of a lot more than I do. So when she wakes up screaming and yelling, I forgot something, this happened, if something's really interesting in that dream, I'll write that down. But that's basically cheating, so it's...
I keep index cards next to the bed because I write a lot of songs when I'm dreaming. I often, I've even completed songs in dreams. You know, recently I can dream kind of like that.
Yeah.
So I write. I always keep index cards there and write it. Yeah, I do. And then I don't remember that I did it, and I get up and I see that I, in very sloppy handwriting, finish the chorus and the verses of a couple, you know. So yeah, dreams affect what I do a lot.
So I have Bob Dylan on my mind because I saw him last week, and you had said that when you were 12, you thought you were Bob Dylan. And I just wanted to know, when you stopped being Bob Dylan, you started writing with your own voice.
I think sometimes it's very important to believe you're somebody else at some point in time. I mean, like I think all the great British rock bands from the 60s thought that they were black blues guys, and they did a bad job of it, and they created something that seemed original. So I think, and I think that the fact that they loved those old black blues guys so much made the magic happen in the British invasion. It's about love. It's about, you know, if you really love the giants that came before it, it's about, I think reverence is the foundation of great art. You know, there's got to be some reverence in there, feeling of family. But about Bob Dylan, when I was 12, I was introduced to Bob Dylan by my cousin Patsy, who ran away to the village when she was 16. This is like in the early 60s we're talking about. I'm pretty old, I'm 64. I'm 60. But when I was 12, I was introduced to Dylan, and I learned everything that he had done up to that point, and imitated him completely. And there's the Blonde on Blonde album for the different. I grew my hair like that. I wear sunglasses. I got a striped scarf. I was 12. I started having a cigarette hang out of my mouth. He's even lighting up the cigarette. And I thought I was Bob Dylan. When I played the clubs, you know, like coffee houses and stuff like that in Center City, Philadelphia, I really thought I was Dylan. And there was room to be Dylan because Dylan thought he was Woody Guthrie at the time. But I think when you think you're someone else, if you think you're, you know, John Lee Hooker, or you think you're somebody other than yourself, and you think highly of those people, it takes the ceiling off what you might put on yourself and let you do something great, because you're dealing with somebody you revere and love, so you can be greater. I think that's the way we climb. If there's reverence for the past, but an attempt to do something more with it, I think that's the way we all contribute to the evolution of things, you know.
Did you feel like Bob Dylan?
Yeah, I loved Bob Dylan when I was a kid. I mean, I had the little harmonica, and I could play guitar. I had my first acoustic guitar had the strings that were this high from the fretboard.
Everybody's musical aspiration.
And then I got a bar chord this, and I'm doing all this gymnastics with the thing. But I got the harmonica. I couldn't play harmonica, but I got the thing, the harmonica, and bang, bang, you know, blow it in the wind. You know, kind of like a punkified Bob Dylan, but not punkified Bob Dylan. But he was an inspiration for all of us. He was a great lyricist, but some of his words were like way over here. you know.
Over his head too.
Yeah, probably. And it was like, it's got to be great. I don't understand what it is. It's like, you know, like modern art. It's like, oh, it's fantastic, but I don't get it.
All right, so if we consider Dylan to be a poet, why do we keep calling him a lyricist? I mean, is there a difference between the two? Is there a joining of the two somewhere along the line?
You know, like when I came tonight, it was a little bit, you always come with a little bit of prejudice, you know, which just means like jumping to conclusions about things before you know what they really are in real time, you know. When I came here, I was nervous about doing poetry or, you know, coming as, but I don't think there's any difference. And you know, some people like to hold on to an aesthetic difference. There are purists in every field, you know. That's okay, you know. There's something. Being a purist is a certain reverence to things, but I think holding on to that is prejudice. And I think anything that moves things forward, any art, whether it's just something simple that someone does, it doesn't have to be great structurally. A piece of poetry, it could be, you know, 3 lines that change people's lives. I think that's more valuable than a good piece of structure. I mean, the craft's nice. It's nice to build great houses. But then, what do you do in those houses as a kid?
Well, lyrics also, and like you were mentioning, the structure is a lot more counting the syllables and doing the end rhymes, and then having verse, chorus, verse, chorus. So there's a structure to it. However, obviously, there's structures in poetry as well. You know, sonnets and haikus and what have you. So it's really just another form of the art, if you will. It's working with the words, and you know, you can be a lyricist and you can be a poet, and I think it's semantics. I think it's more or less the same.
Yeah. All right, when you both work with words, because I know this happens to me a lot. I work with the words, and I work with the rhythm of the words. Do you guys do that too? Is there do you sense an inherent rhythm to the words that sets them, especially for you, sets it into music?
I think so, yeah. I think so, yeah. I think it's got a lot to do with it.
Yeah, also when you write it, I use a lot of like, instead of having the rhyme at the end, I'll use rhymes within, and a lot of word play, and that sort of thing goes into it. So, yeah, it's more or less the same idea, I think.
Anyone? Question? Yep, good.
I'm curious about the difference between when you write, when you're reading, and you're reading from your written word, and recitation from memory. We had both of those things tonight. And I love that you brought up Dylan, because I was also thinking about Dylan in terms of the difference between like the spoken word with poetry and then the poetry as music. Because you were bringing up this whole thing. Is it okay if I'm playing music? And Dylan clearly is a bard and a musician and just had no ballad. It was very, very controversial. And but it seems as though there's some things going on right now in contemporary poetry where there's recitation, there's spoken word, and then there's readings where you're reading from the written word. And I feel like they're all very different things, and I was just wondering if you could each talk about those, because each of you kind of dealt with different aspects of that. And so I'm just wondering about that.
Well, I know for myself that I have the hardest time trying to memorize anything. I have to read from the page. I don't know why, I just can't do it. So I try to do it as if it was an actor doing it. And again, I'll look for the rhythm of the thing, and that sets it up. But to actually try and memorize anything, it's not there.
I'm the same way with Mike. I can't remember. That's why I don't do slam and stuff like that, because these guys are fantastic. They memorize everything. I gotta have in front of me, because also you get nervous when you're up here. You get nervous, and I know I get nervous. I was like blah 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 blah. It's not gonna happen. So I'm very much into. I have to do it. But like Mike said, also, it's about trying to bring forth the passion from the page and make you guys feel it. Because when I'm up here, I feel it. I don't know about Mike, but when I'm up here, it's almost like you go into a different place. I wouldn't say it's trance per se, but you almost like get into the character, so to speak, and you just start living that world. And then it just comes naturally. A lot of it is nervous energy. When I do this shaking stuff, you know, part of it so you don't see me shaking on the page, but a lot of it is just you feel it, and it just emotes. And I wish I could memorize it. I think it would look a lot cooler, but I can't. I just can't do it.
There are several fabulous poets here in Hudson Valley that can literally memorize everything they do, and it literally becomes a one-woman, one-man show, how they do it. And how they do it, I have absolutely no idea.
Well, how do musicians do it?
And how do the musicians?
How do musicians do it? I mean, you know.
I think somehow, you know, when the music's attached to it, it sticks a little bit more. I know the lyrics to almost everything from almost any song that was ever written from the 20s or anything else. If I start playing it, I know the lyrics. You know, you heard my father do it, or they both played. My grandfather do it, and I remember the lyrics. I mean, I don't know how small I was. But somehow the music makes it stick a little bit more.
And that's part of the process of a new piece.
Yeah, it is. And I think, like Mikey said, you know, if you do it with like a rhythm or a cadence, like he reads, there's something in that that's very musical. You know, but I think somehow it sticks. Like Tink, you know, Tink, my wife is not, she says she's not a lyrics person. She's like a classical flautist by trade. But when those lyrics went in and stayed, I didn't know what they were. I wasn't cognizant of what it was or the meaning. And then I could spout them back and they're there. Somehow the music lets you memorize a little bit easier.
I was just going to say, my mother died from Alzheimer's, and toward the end of her life, when she could no longer speak, I could sit there and go, she'll be coming around the mountain, and she would sing absolutely every lyric.
Yes.
So
yes.
I know it lodges in a different place than
Yeah.
ordinary language, when words and music are put together.
Yes, yes. It's miraculous that.
Yeah.
Michael, you were saying something, and it just struck me because you know my stuff as a poet. I don't write with the flow, any kind of musical flow of words, and I don't find that flow until after I read a piece a couple of times, and then I'm like, oh, there is a pattern here. Okay, and I'm not rhythmic enough or musical enough to find that in my writing right away. How do you maintain that consistently? I mean, you know your stuff right here. It's always there.
I don't know. I literally just, I'll start with a sentence. I might even be as a matter of fact, I'm working on a piece right now that I want to be about Vincent van Gogh, and I cannot start the piece until I figure out what the very first word is. Because the first word is going to set the rhythm of the rest of it. And I've been holding on to this piece for 2 weeks now, and I can't go anywhere with it because I just cannot, 1, 2, 3. I just can't do it. I can't find it at this point. So the rhythm, the words create their own rhythm, and as you use more and more words, like don't use bad, don't use the common words. Go find something else, and they create a whole other rhythm along. They create a whole new rhythm, and then you can start moving around. And that works for me the best out of anything else.
It's very subconscious, Jim. It's very much like when you start writing, you don't really know where it's going. 99% of the time you have no idea where it's going, and you kind of get that rhythm thrown within your mind, I guess, and onto the page, and it just drives it, that way. But most times I start writing, I have an idea what I think I want to write, but then it just takes a life of its own. And that's a great place when you're actually writing, and you're a writer, obviously, as a writer, when you got that creative mojo going, for lack of a better word, that's pretty wild stuff. And if you don't, I'm sure artists are like that also. Once you get that, whatever it is going, you're on that train, just let it go, and wherever it goes, you know, that's cool.
Yeah, I find like I could write a blog, whole big thing, and then I'll read it several times, and all of a sudden something, okay, boom, and then it's a process of elimination. And then you wind up, you had this thing, and then you got something that's much tighter, much more rhythmic, whatever. And I, with me, again, like I'm not a rhythmic person, as far as when I write my poetry, I just kind of let it go. Whatever's coming is coming, and then I look at it later on. I'm always impressed when I listen to other poets and I listen to lyricists, writers, musicians, with the rhythm, the patterns, the symmetry, the music in the poetry, you know. And that's what I strive for, but I don't get it when I first put words down on paper.
That's where the craft comes in also, Jim.
That's where I work at.
Exactly, and it's just a matter of, and that's what I was saying before about the editing. You know, it always starts like this. You know, it's always this, and you extract and you pull things together, and it comes out maybe a very rhythmic piece and everything, but it didn't start that way. You know, it's all, but that's when the hard work. You know, we roll up the sleeves and you get to work.
Do you write whether you feel like it or not?
Excellent question. That's an excellent question.
And you're going to answer it first.
Yes. I think you have to. Well, I think you have to. There's I don't know who said it, but somebody said something like, writing is the only thing that I do where it's like, I know I have to be doing it. In other words, I could be going to work, but it's like, you know, or mowing the lawn or whatever. But writing is the one thing that, you know what, it's the most important thing I got to do. And inspiration is always there somehow or another. And I think I've gotten better with this as I'm getting older, that you make your own inspiration, so to speak. You know, you don't sit around waiting under the apple tree for the thing to hit you in the head and say, "I'm Eureka!" Of course, you know, it makes perfect sense. You almost have to have a certain discipline to do it. And if you're going to take your art seriously, I think you do that. And whether I always feel like it. Sometimes it doesn't come out too well, you know, but I always feel like it, and I think I can always write something. In fact, it's a good exercise to write something every day. It doesn't have to be great. You don't have to rewrite War and Peace. Something on the page every day.
Do you write every day?
Yeah, I write every day. It's interesting because my wife has been talking to me more about doing things for the discipline of it. For me, it's like writing has been like survival for me. You know, like if I get in a dark space or whatever, writing has been like a ladder out for me. You know, it's a way for me to deal with all kinds of things. And I often, like I said, meditate on topics that are concerns of mine. You know, in the world. What about this or what about that? And that's a lot of my music and lyrics come from that kind of space, like trying to figure out how to solve things. You know. So I write every day. I write constantly, and I write obsessively, but it's not a discipline thing. That I admire Tony for even saying that, and I'm trying to get to that point because I think that's like honing the craft. That's like really like, you know, sculpting or you know, making that thing have good musculature or whatever. You know, for me, it's always it always comes from how do you solve things. So I go to very dark places and climb out because of my writing. I wanted to say this little thing too, I don't know why I feel like to say this, but I just wanted to say to any inspiring writer out there who gets stuck, don't write on good paper. Write on scraps, write on toilet paper, write on things that don't scare you, that someone's going to read it. Because what I do is I just accumulate scraps, you know, just pieces of information. And later on they might spark the thing. Maybe the ghosts are telling me to say that to somebody, you know.
We all have those drawer fulls of those little, you know, napkins.
Yeah, that's the best stuff.
I think we all have that.
Yeah, you carry around one notebook with everything scribbled in for like 13,000 years, and it's like, I'll find a line in there.
I know, but I can't read my penmanship then. What the hell?
Do you find yourself writing when you're on, because you guys tour a lot too, do you find yourself writing on the tour every day?
Yeah, I write a lot when we're touring in the car. the time that I write the most is when we go into the studio to record the last 10 things that I wrote. And as soon as we hit the record button, 10 songs will come down. Like songs start pouring down when we're about to record the new stuff. And I always have to say, I gotta go to the other room, you know, and I start writing stuff. That's why some of our albums are like 21 songs long rather than 10.
All right, so does that work the same way with you? Let's say you're putting a new manuscript together and you're looking at all this stuff and then all of a sudden 10 new ones come down. That happens to you?
Oh yeah. It's like the floodgates are open, you know, and you get, I've been on a really good run. I'm not saying the stuff is good, I'm not being conceited, but I've been on a good run of just like writing a lot of stuff. And sometimes it's frustrating because sometimes you got 3/4 of the thing done and it's like, that's not bad, but I just can't finish it. What you do then, you just stop it and go to something else.
Yeah.
You know, don't dwell on it because sometimes it's just not there. It will come eventually, but that's all the time now. Lately, it's you know, at the end of the day, it's the cell phones. I mean, everybody's like at work. They go, "You're always texting at work. You're always texting. Don't text me. Don't text me." I said, "Well, there's texting, yeah, but there's also writing. You got the notebook feature in here, and I write like crazy on the stupid thing." And then you can talk into it, you know, and that sort of thing. I write so much more now. I feel almost like I'm cheating because I'm doing it more on the phone as opposed to getting the paper out. And I got notebooks, you know, my place has lots of notebooks all over the place. But I find most of the stuff within the last 2 years has been on the phone. I don't know if it's better or worse. It's different, but it's interesting. You know, maybe it's just because it's right there. And I'm not going to lose, well, I could lose it. I probably will lose it now, but.
Can I chip in? Towne made me think of something too. When you said that thing about sometimes, you know, you'll start to write a lot and you'll get stuck on one thing. Because I have like kind of severe ADD, you know, as a kid, I would always get very accused by teachers and stuff that I couldn't finish things. And then I realized that if I just partially finish things, I wind up finishing 20 things at once. So I think that's important for writers to not get caught in the accusation of not finishing stuff, but realize things are kind of moving in cycles. Because sometimes people say, how did you do that? You know, you wrote 10 songs in a day. But it's only because you can let them go until they're ready to come back around. And that's a very good trick that took me a long time to learn and get rid of the accusation of being a procrastinator or whatever they used to say that we were.
Going back to the idea of recording on a cell phone or a digital recorder or whatever, do you ever find yourself, you like really burning with energy when you're talking into it, and then all of a sudden you're listening back and it's like, oh man, what was that all about? You know, like try and recapture the energy or something?
But yeah, you know, yeah, you do, but the funny thing is, I usually get back to the energy pretty quickly, which is very surprising to me, myself, because I know me pretty good after 59 years, I think I know me pretty good, and it surprises me that I can still jump in at that same spot, and you know, it takes me maybe a minute or two to get the feeling back, and then it's, okay, here I am, there we go. So, but it's weird, and I can't explain. I wish I could say, you know, Mike, just do this and then this, and you're there. I can't do that because I don't know how it works in the circuitry, but but somehow or another, I'm able to do that.
Yeah, phones are a gift. I feel like, you know, just with that topic a little bit more. Just, I think that the fact that, you know, the recording studios that had to be built in New York City and the video, high def video things, everything is on this one little phone. And you know, there's curses to it that people don't talk to each other sometimes, but there's a lot of gifts in using this stuff, because you can get a lot of sketches down and move things a lot forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I got a lot of my stuff on there, so hopefully I won't lose the phone. Dave.
You used the word discipline in writing before. I'm wondering, you know, if we have long poems and really short poems and lyrics, is there never a struggle to know when to stop? You know, when did you get enough and just shut up?
My stuff tends to be short anyway, and I think what happens is I'll be writing and if I find myself running out of steam, it's not worth being a longer piece. I got to go where the steam ends, and that's it. And to try and think that, okay, if I force these 2 more lines in there, maybe I'll get 6 more, I can't do it. I go totally on, for lack of a better word, the buzz of it, and take it from there.
I find that a lot of times, though, like Mike says, that there's the buzz is going, and sometimes I don't know when to stop. And sometimes I just go right through that stop sign, and I'm like, shit, I think I killed something back there. I should have put the brakes a long time ago.
I think it's true of a lot of different art media, visual arts as well. That you can really sort of nail it and then you kill it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, overworking things is a problem sometimes. Really. I've been discovering that I've been discovering the value of raw, because I'm not that kind of person. I'm not very spontaneous. I'm a lot more conservative than I look. But I think it's really good to keep. Sometimes it's the raw conveys a lot more. It's what a piece can resonate rather than what you say with it. And sometimes you can make it say so much and hone the craft so much that it loses the resonance that the universe is trying to say something through. So keeping things raw seems to be it's a new trick I'm just learning.
Along the same lines, there's a line, I don't know who said it, but he said, "Kill your darlings." I don't know if you're familiar with that line.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, this is the greatest line I ever wrote. And I can't, sometimes you have to kill it. Sometimes it's like, it's not going to work, and you just have to put it aside for another poem or another piece.
So you guys said, you got to a place where you're writing and you get to a point where you can't finish and you just leave it, or you run through the stop sign. And I heard 2 things.
Right.
Now, have you ever just experienced the fact that you're into a poem and all of a sudden you went off on a tangent completely into a whole nother poem?
Yep.
Have you ever done that?
Oh yeah, too many times, Mike. Jimmy, too many times. It's like a lot of times it's kind of like you forget when you go into that trance that I was talking about before, and you're writing, and you're on Route 84, and you didn't realize that you got off exit 13. You're thinking you're still on 84, and it's like, wait a second. This is a whole different animal that you're working on, and it happens a lot. And that's when kind of like the editing comes in, and it's like, oh boy, I'm gonna have to. It's becoming a monster, and maybe there's 3 or 4 monsters instead of one big monster there, But yeah.
So when I write, sometimes if I pull myself off, I get a lot done. There's a point of diminishing returns. You have to experience things in order to have things to write about.
Research. Research is very important to the arts, and research can take you in a lot of interesting places, because you don't necessarily want to live your life a certain way, but I'm very curious as to what makes people tick. And a lot of my poems are about characters that I am not. It's not autobiographical, but it's somebody that I'm very interested in, and I try to find out as much as I can about them, so I can, in essence, be them on the written word. But research is very, very important, to not necessarily to live the life, but at least get a taste for it,
Yeah, I have a tendency of, like, if I read something, like if I read a quote or something, the quote will take me somewhere. I'll go and see who made the quote, what context was, and then all of a sudden there'll be something in there that'll send me into a historical thing. That'll then send me off into a cultural one. And the next thing I know, it's all getting intertwined and interspersed and all kinds of things. And I'll just take it from there. But like Tony says, that is research. You don't necessarily have, it's fun to go out there and live it all, but it's 24 hours in a day if you can live it all. But you can do the research and find things. This is connected to that, that's connected to this is connected to that, and then it's all on how you spin it. And that works best for me. You, sir? Does that work for you?
Yeah, I think for me too, a lot of times, because I think that I believe in the ghostwriters, and I also think that the universe is trying to communicate some simpler messages to us than we're used to functioning in. You know, I think our complexity kind of keeps messing things up. There's some rudimentary stuff we can't slow down enough to get. A lot of times, if I get some lines, it's good to try to figure out, to go out and interact with people. In other words, in some ways, I think it's good to become your art a little bit, you know, to try to improve yourself based on a little fragment, and then you might come back to the actual craft with a better idea because of some interaction you did or some service you did to someone, you know, that kind of thing. Sometimes the actions can improve the work, I think, if that makes sense.
Couple more questions, anybody? Yes? Yep.
I just want to hear from you who you're reading right now or who your favorite poet is. If you have, or a couple of poets that you really admire.
Jurkovic, of course.
I'm always reading their work, and I always go to readings wishing that they would, like Irish musicians would attribute their sources or honor their mentors or say, I learned this tune from so-and-so who did this and taught it to so-and-so, and this is my version of it. And I always think poets should read something from somebody else before they launch into their own work. That's just my ethic from where I'm coming from. So I always wonder, who are people reading right now?
I'm not reading anybody poetry-wise like right now, but some of the folks that have stayed in my consciousness for the longest time are Kenneth Patchen, Denise Lieberthoff has always been there. I would have to say Jack Kerouac was probably the biggest one, probably set me on this whole course. I've been reading Wendell Berry from time to time, but that's pretty much what I'm reading poetry-wise. Outside of that, everything I read now is either political or musical, and that's a whole another conversation.
A lot of the stuff that I read, what I'm reading right now is mostly fiction. Richard Price, who I think is a fantastic writer, very New York City author, because I love the grit, you know, the New York City vibe, if you will. Every time I go to the city, it feels like I'm rejuvenated. There's a certain mojo in that town, and Richard Price just writes his ass off. I think it's fantastic. As far as poets go, I subscribe mostly to guys like the Beats, Allen Ginsberg, Bukowski. But I gotta say, there's a lot of, like, I'm not gonna kiss Mikey's ass because he's here, but Mike's a terrific writer, you know. And there's so many. What's very sobering in a lot of ways, because sometimes I write something and I said, you know what, I'm pretty damn good. And then I go to an open mic and said, you know what, there's 20 guys here, they're pretty damn good. You know, so you go to Caps and you go, Ken Holland, Jim Heath, I mean, you know, these guys are fantastic writers. So a lot of the people that I know now, like Facebook friends or stuff like that, Catfish McFarris, Tim Peeler, these are not household names, but they're just regular guys, but they're terrific writers. And like I said, the Caps people, these guys knock your socks off, you know. And it's a great environment, a nurturing environment to be a part of, you know.
Thanks, Towne. Who are you reading or listening?
Well, my super ADD, whatever that means, you know, it's a label for something. I'm very fragmented and tangential, you know, and non-linear. As soon as I start reading anything and I feel a love for that, you know, any short piece, I start writing. So I've hit a point where it's kind of like a ping pong game for me. I mean, it's like, and I really try to, rather than study the craft of anybody, although it probably would help my craft if I studied craft, but you know, at my age, it's like more like, I try to really absorb the essence of that person. I try to drink as much of any person, any conversation as much as I can, and then try to use the fuel of that to do what I do, you know. So the process for me has become like that. I'm not reading anybody. I'm reading everything that I bump into tangentially on the internet or things like that, or conversations, you know. I just absorb. I think we're at a time right now where everything kind of wants to be molecular again. You know, in other words, it's trying to break into smaller pieces. We've done great things. We've done great works. I even question the works and the structures, things that I valued and loved in the past. I'm not sure we don't need to unravel everything and reassess so that we might be a little bit more aligned and not in such pain all the time in our lives. I really like, I'm more about unraveling and trying to find the essence of things and writing from there, you know, the yin and yang of things kind of thing almost, you know.
So what are you reading?
What?
What am I reading?
Yeah.
I like Charles Olson and Charles Rutherford and the Projectivists.
Cool. If I can just reiterate on what Tony was saying, there is a rich, besides all the great singer-songwriters here in the Hudson Valley, there is a rich trove of poets in the Hudson Valley that if you can get there, find their books, or see them playing, reading somewhere, they're just some fabulous names. Raphael Kosek, the wonderful Irino Garden will be here next month, is another fabulous poet in the area. There's just many people to discover and to actually find joy in. And that's my 2 cents, right? Cool. Unless there's any more questions, I think we're going to call this a night. I think this was pretty successful. What do you think? I want to thank Towne. I want to thank Joziah. We'll be back on July 27th, Thursday, July 27th, with Irino Garden and singer-songwriter Jim Coyle over there in the corner. And we're hoping that Dutchess County Poet Laureate Gold will be here with us too. So come on back and check out www.cornwallpoets.net for more information on CAPS. Thanks, everybody.